Hi, my name's leowt, and you have found your way to the Conversations podcast. Conversations exist to create spiritually minded conversations about life. We desire to create safe space for dialogue and community. We desire to come together regularly and intentionally to generate conversations about life, belief, and the intersection of the two. Everyone is welcome at the conversation.
If you're watching this, drop me a note or drop me an emoji or a comment or whatever if you've seen the HBO documentary Q Into the Storm. Because I was up until 1 o'clock last night watching this, and I'm not gonna lie. Oh, I see some laughs. I'm not gonna lie, man. It really got me thinking. So I have to admit that I was originally watching this documentary, 6-part documentary on HBO about QAnon, totally watching it for the laughs at the beginning. And my apologies to, in particular, people in my life who I know. This hat, I'm telling you, is messing. Look at how crooked it is. I can't straighten it. It's too weird. So I was particularly, I don't want to offend anybody who might be watching this, but I genuinely want to have a conversation about this piece. And I haven't, the beginning of the QAnon documentary, it just dives into kind of what QAnon was, how it came from, and the underpinnings that got us to where we are now in the world, right? And at first it was all kind of this just tinfoil hat conspiracy thing that I was literally looking at as kind of a joke, I guess. I was just looking at it to see how crazy it was. But then as I started watching, I got to episode 3 and it started to take a really, really a dark turn. And for those of you who are watching and haven't seen it, sorry, there's gonna be little spoilers, but I mean, this already happened in real life. So there's kind of real life spoilers anyways. But, so in episode 3, they start talking about how on this website, which was kind of a message board format, it was called 8chan, and it was kind of one of the places that QAnon functioned, right? Q is this invisible character that would post things, and people would go on there and derive meaning from these things. But on this website, 8chan, people could live stream or post anything, right, under the guise of free speech. And so I can't remember the date, and I feel really bad for not remembering the date of this because it's important, but on this certain date, I want to say it was in 2018, someone was live streaming what looked like preparing to go shoot, and people oh, this is LARPing, live action role play, this isn't real, whatever. And then out of nowhere, boom, this guy hops out of a vehicle, walks into a mosque, and starts massacring people, firing his semi-automatic weapon into the crowd of worshipers that were in their place of worship just for their regular service. And this was in Christchurch, New Zealand, I believe. And he also continued to leave that place and then go to a secondary place and then shoot up that mosque as well, which is horrifying. This was live broadcast, it was reshared, his manifesto was on the website, and it was really, really disturbing. Emily, I am so sorry that you don't have HBO. Let me see if I can find a way to stream this. I wonder, you should all sign up for a free 7-day trial of HBO to watch Q Into the Storm. I bet you could watch it. So this shooting happens, right? Then we fast forward a little bit, and this guy goes into a synagogue and shoots up a synagogue. And I can't remember the name of the synagogue. It started with a P. So he goes into this synagogue and starts shooting up a synagogue. And he was 19, I think. And he posted his manifesto on 8chan, the same website that hosted the message boards for Q. And then fast forward a little bit further, and some guy walks into a Walmart in El Paso, Texas, and starts shooting it up. And same thing, posts a manifesto, goes live, puts it on this website. And his express goal that he said was to kill as many Mexicans as possible. And so it really got me thinking, right? I think I'm only on episode 4, but it really got me thinking because the main arguments as I see them expressed by this documentary, right? They are I don't know if it was Tree of Life in Pittsburgh. I cannot remember. So if someone wants to fact check that and drop that in the comments for me, that'd be dope. Because I was thinking Tree of Life, but then I thought there was a P in the name. So yeah, so we have mosque, synagogue, and then public space explicitly looking to hunt Mexicans. And the dichotomy as I see it that's presented, right, with QAnon and like the others, right, is like QAnon sees themselves as the true patriots, and this directly overlaps with Trump followers and MAGA and like right-leaning or alt-right conservatism, which is frequently bolstered and overlaps with American evangelicalism. Okay, March 15th, 2019, that was Christchurch for the mosque. And so these are the dichotomy, right? Like this is the QAnon, MAGA, alt-right, American Christian over here, and they are defending this. They're defending this platform and this cause and this person because it is. Oh, thank you for dropping that. Thank you so much. So there's resources being dropped in the comment box for like more information about the terror attacks that I'm saying. And so there's this, right? There's this body of basically the idea behind QAnon and the idea behind MAGA and the idea behind the Republican Party as it was under Trump, and the idea behind the sort of carte blanche Christian evangelical support of Donald Trump is this idea of defending free speech and being a true patriot and standing up for freedom. But my question is, and like everyone else is sheep. So like I'm a sheep. I'm totally a sheep. I can't think for myself. I just believe the lies. I am spoon-fed bullshit left and right. And I surely can't be a Christian and be who I am. I surely can't be this, that, or the other and be a free thinker. I'm just a sheep. But my question is, with this like website like 8chan, of course there's ethical. It was Tree of Life. Okay, thank you. I couldn't remember. I was really struggling to remember there, and I feel terrible for not being able to say the name, like say their name, right, of this tragedy. But like, why is it always that there is either like it's this freedom of speech clause, or you're a sheep? Right? But why does the freedom of speech always lead to just a rampant outpouring of white supremacy? I was sitting there and watching this. I was like, I was like 4 hours deep into this documentary. It's 1:00 and I'm like, I should probably sleep. But why is it that we will defend so hard freedom of speech, but then that freedom of speech inevitably goes to the end of white supremacy and like vilifying and publicly executing the other? I think freedom of speech is great, but why are we defending something that always ends up in this end, right? No, I'm not saying freedom of speech. I'm just saying, why does this freedom of speech conversation always seem to coalesce with like domestic terrorism? Why is that? I don't know. And I'm so confused. I'd love to hear what you folks are thinking, because I'm genuinely super, super curious about it. So drop a comment if you have one, and drop a thought if you've had one, because I'd love to honestly just like chat with you folks about this. Because it's confusing to me. Like, is there a psychological flaw in humanity that leads us to this? Is it at least part of the problem is America's very passionate love for guns? Is it faith-based? Like, what is it that leads this conversation about free speech to always include all of this, right? Loss of privilege as oppression. Emily, I think that's part of the conversation, because people will view loss of privilege as like real oppression, as if like Muslims and Jews and Mexicans didn't lose privilege, or weren't oppressed by losing their lives for someone else's right to free speech. I guess that's like sort of the rub there, is why is it like free speech, or free speech goes hand in hand with like literally murdering anyone who's different. It's like a systemic othering. And of course, like there's there's like psychologists and philosophers and psychologists that have ideas on this, but I just really wanted to have like a conversation with you guys, because it seems to me, like I said, that this idea of free speech always, at least when it's presented by like this QAnon, alt-right, Republican, Christian nationalism, it always arrives at domestic terrorism, literally, right? This sort of oppression, this assault on free speech is absolutely like, it's part of a perception of persecution, because there's no widespread persecution of American Christianity. Sure, people will throw stats at me all the time that like, sure, Christians are the most persecuted. Okay, but that's literally because there's the most Christians of any religious group in the world. If you break down the percentages and you get down into ratios, Christians are absolutely not the most persecuted group in the world. And it's absurd to say, it's disrespectful to say that. And it really is disrespectful for white folks to say that, oh, like white people are being suppressed. Like, get it out of here. I don't even have time for that. But it's so hard to create a conversation around this topic, because as soon as you create a conversation around this topic, you're a sheep, and then they're a true patriot. It's just, I don't understand how this disconnect happens, because it seems not completely linear. Does that make sense? Like, it's not like A plus B equals C. It's like A plus B equals rampant domestic terrorism under the guise of free speech. Like, those things don't seem to me like they have to connect, but they seem like they're statistically co-occurring. And I don't fully understand that. Like, I don't get why. It definitely seems like white people are fearful that we won't be in the majority, like speaking as a broad stroke, because just as like not all men are rapists, not all white people are racist, and not all white people are fearful of people who are perceived as other. But there's strong underpinnings. If you talk about like the system of toxic masculinity and the system of white supremacy, like these things have undeniable, tangible aspects. And I just don't understand, like, how do we have a better cultural conversation about this? Oh, that's a good percent. That is a good statistic, Emily. So Emily said the highest percentage of dog bites are attributed to Labradors. They're by volume, not by aggression of the breed. Which is that's a great point, because like you can manipulate numbers to say a lot of things, right? You can do that, and so it's not necessarily, I think the problem is that we're not looking at individuals in this situation. We're looking at systems and underpinnings of systems that uphold these sort of harmful things. And so, like, while not all white people might be racist, there is a system of white supremacy that's at play, 100%. And how do we move to have a better cultural conversation? I think that I ask myself this question all the time, right? Like, why is and please understand when I'm saying generalizations here, I know they're generalizations, but it's the best way I know how to talk about them, so please accept that caveat. But why is like the right, quote unquote, the silent majority, whatever you want to call the right in this country, the right is so united around a cause? And the left, which tends to be more progressive, and the left in America is like basically a centrist that lost their balance a little bit, right? There's not even really crazy true leftists, at least being presented in big scales. So why is it that the right can unite so effectively and the left is like over here not coalescing? And I think my friend Justin Hubbard has talked about this a lot. We've had conversations about this, and I found a really dope TikTok about this. I'll put the comment in the chat bar in a bit after this video is over. But basically, fear is a hell of a motivator. And it seems to me like the thing that the right has done, the thing that QAnon has done, the thing that, honestly, Donald Trump's campaign did this so well. I can't stand the man. He's a racist, and he's not a Christian, and he's a rapist. You know what I mean? But what happened was Donald Trump realized if you can get people afraid, you can pull them together. And fear crosses those divisions of class, like you mentioned, Victoria. Fear crosses those divisions of age. Fear crosses those divisions of socioeconomic divide, and fear unites people. So if you need to unite people, right, apparently you can just throw out this thing that is a boogeyman. Like right now, the single biggest boogeyman, and when I say boogeyman, I picture the villains from Scooby-Doo. You guys know how in Scooby-Doo they always like pull off the hood and it's like, well, look who we have here, right? Right now the boogeyman, right, that's on the top is critical race theory. But when you pull it off, right, it's really the same underpinnings that we've been talking about. It's not really critical race theory. It's that people are afraid of people who are different. People are afraid of losing the power that they say they don't have. That is why people are afraid of things like critical race theory, which have groundings in social science and in history. But that's the boogeyman. But right now, if everybody who is afraid of CRT unites, that's a big group. But then you have people on the left who are having a conversation socially about what is CRT, what matters about it, what's good about it, what do we take, what do we leave. And so really, basically what's happening is like the left is over here saying like, how many people does it take to change a light bulb? And the right is over here with an assault rifle that shoots the light bulb out of the socket and puts another one in. And it's because there's an identified fear, an identified target. There is facts are no longer agreed upon, which is interesting because you can make a lot of things, say a lot of things with the right amount of manipulation, but I feel like that's been another specific tactic, specifically of like that QAnon, Donald Trump, Republican, like alt-right mindset has been, okay, let's create chaos. And it's so funny because so many evangelical pastors like to use the phrase, there's a verse in the Bible that says chaos is a paraphrase, but it basically says chaos doesn't come from God. Right? So if there's chaos and if there's confusion, the devil is the author of confusion. So it's a genius match set point, right? Because you say the devil creates confusion and then someone creates confusion and all of a sudden it's the devil and we're afraid and we're all united about this thing. People don't know what critical race theory is. They're confused about what it actually is. And so it becomes this amazing boogeyman target. And I don't know how else to put it, and I don't know else how to describe it, but these are very real forces that are happening in our world. And in the Q Into the Storm documentary, they talk about how one of the things that you can do is there was actually like psyops in the military, right? Psyops was essentially psychological operations, and it's a non-weaponized campaign because it's a psychological campaign. And so the idea is you plant the idea in the head of the public that facts are not true and that everybody is lying to you. And then you foster that with cryptic messages and this idea that confusion comes from the devil. And all of a sudden you have the devil and you have evil and you have confusion and you have all of these things coalescing, boom, perfect storm, to literally never pick up a weapon but to encourage others to be weaponized. And it was not an incalculable outcome that this would breed domestic terrorism and hate crimes, right? It's not like the cause and the effect are unlinked in this case, right? The cause is part of the problem and the effect is part of the problem. It is so interesting to me because we have these boogeymen and we have this conversation, but the conversation is not really about what the conversation is about. So you get people that have been told they're being lied to, and they feel like they're being disenfranchised, and they feel like they're under attack, and you create in them this idea that they're under attack by feeding them cryptic messages and fake news, and you have created a perfect storm to weaponize and arm and harm people without you ever doing it. So this conversation about free speech, which started at like should we censor on the internet comes from should we censor on the internet to white supremacy. Like we've pulled the hood off. We've pulled the hood off of CRT, and underneath it is like white supremacy and Christian nationalism. It's so interesting to me. This is a good quote, Joanne. Anyone who possesses a threat to another person, anyone who basically who has a position of wealth and power can be a threat to another person. And white people tend to be in positions of power. Now, here's another interesting part of the conversation, which I think is interesting, is that you can simultaneously have social capital and be told that you don't. Like, you can mess with that idea. And so what happens is, like, white people still have social capital. Like, poor white people still have their whiteness. But they're told that their freedoms are being taken away. And so then this person is in a position of power, but they don't believe they're in power. And then they feel oppressed. And then they strike out. And all of these things are, like, essentially head games that have created the mindset that we live in right now. It's all interconnected. And so my question is, like, how do we is there a way to peel back the layers? Yeah, mostly dudes. You are correct. Like straight, white, cis, male, Christian folks. That's literally the pinnacle of power. And if you can tell those people they're being oppressed, then they use their voice, which is already amplified because of their social privilege, and you've weaponized a people group. So how do we have a conversation about freedom of speech and about autonomy and about freedom of thought? Like, how do we have those conversations without them ending up in message boards that broadcast hate crimes, that broadcast racist, anti-Semitic, homophobic content, and that broadcast, one of the things that was interesting to me was, like, on this 8chan website where QAnon was posting was a ton of pedophilic pornography. And so, like, we're decrying the global cabal that is raping children in the basement of Pizza Comet or Comet Pizza. But then we're taking part of this conversation on a website that is actually propagating that sort of illegal underage pornographic material. It just seems so interesting to me. Like, how do we have this conversation? There's some major psychology behind it. And I started out watching this documentary for laughs. And I ended up having a deeply embattled conversation within myself about the idea of free speech and the systems at play in our world that underpin hate, and what do we do about it. And I know right now, to bring it back home to Olean, like, we have this conversation happening because our former middle school principal was a pastor who was preaching things that are absolutely phrases that have been used to incite violence against people groups. But he was a pastor saying these things. So everybody wants to cry freedom of speech. Now, when it comes to the school board, or when it comes to the school system, that's an easy one to me, because you shouldn't be in charge of a school system when you publicly say things that go against the mission, vision, values of that school system. That's a separate conversation from free speech entirely, because this is like a contractual agreement that you've agreed to work at this place. But what then do we do when you have people up in positions of power, specifically religious positions of power, and they're preaching things that are hateful and that do incite violence? To me, as someone who is in the ordination process and is working towards that, I understand that I have a greater level of social responsibility because I'm in a position where people listen to me. Well, what do you do when you have someone who doesn't understand or doesn't care that they have a greater amount of social responsibility, and they preach things that are divisive? Caveat to say, if you're really preaching the Quran, the Torah, or the Bible, you're not actually preaching hate. If you are preaching hate, it's a skewed agenda of all of those books, period, point blank and period. And I will have that conversation any day. But what do you do when you have someone in power who is shielded behind a religious backing, but they're saying things that, when broken down to the lowest common denominator, are inciting violence? When you say to a white Christian nationalist who probably wouldn't identify as any of those things that something is evil and something is outside of the government of God. And then in the next breath, you pray for all-out warfare assault on the enemy. Logically, those two things get linked together, and someone goes and shoots up a mosque. This is so obvious. But so how do we have a conversation around free speech, which is apparently the only thing Americans care about? We don't care about anything else. We actually don't care about being we the people unless we the people all look the same. Americans value free speech more than the lives of other people, and that's really what it seems like. I don't know how we move forward from this. I don't know what we do about it. But this is clearly a conversation we need to have. Clearly a conversation that's ongoing, and clearly a conversation that our world has to address, and we need to do it 4 years ago. Because we are in a terrible place. And especially with Christianity, American Christianity, particularly evangelical Christianity, has a view of the world that humans have dominion over everything and the world is ultimately going to end. So it creates this idea, that creates this theology of disposability. And we've created a theology of disposability within Christian nationalism. And we've fostered that and undergirded it with this system based on white supremacy. And then we've said that the powers that be are wrong because it's fake news. And we're only listening to this because that's not fake news. Never mind that it's as skewed as anything you're saying that fake news is. We have so many things to do to work on this. I will say at the heart of the QAnon documentary, one of the things that came through really strong to me is the psychology of community. And that's the idea that humans need to belong. Even the most antisocial person still wants to go on a website and find solidarity in a chat board, just like the guy that created 8chan and runs it. So the psychology of community is there. And that psychology of community, that psychological, pathological need for community has been weaponized, and it has been managed and controlled to create an environment where we want community, but we're threatened by people who have been othered and marginalized. And then we hear theology that's disposable and that is either directly or indirectly hateful. And then you arrive at the place where someone is live broadcasting a shooting at a mosque and at a temple and at a Walmart, and people are cheering them on. Is that the wagon that we hitch America onto, is free speech that allows that to happen? Is free speech important? Yes. If one more person tells me simultaneously that I need to burn a book, and then also simultaneously that QAnon is real, I'm going to have so many more questions. But what wagon are we hitching ourselves to as Americans? Are we hitching ourselves to the idea of a melting pot where everybody has equity? Or are we hitching ourselves to the idea where free speech matters than other people's lives? What wagon are we hitching ourselves to? That's my question. I don't know how everybody feels about it, but that's something that I'd like you to think about. So I've got to go back to work. I see that my broadcast is pausing a little bit on Facebook, which is weird because it's not pausing on StreamYards or YouTube. But this video will be posted to YouTube later. If you want to watch it, I'll reshare it without the pauses in it, just so everybody can watch it. But thank you for watching. Thank you so much, Joanne, Victoria, Emily, a couple other folks that I saw in there. Thank you for your comments. I really wanted this to be more of a conversation, and I appreciate your input. I'm very curious to see what people think about this and how they feel about it. But I think that there's a lot of things that we need to untie, and there is some things that we need to understand about QAnon, and that was that it tapped into people's deep need to feel like they belong and to feel like they have agency in their world. So how to create an environment where everybody belongs and where everybody has agency and where everybody has freedom, but that freedom doesn't lead us to a place where we go and shoot up others. That's the question. That's the edge. That's the edge I'd like you guys to push on and hear what you have to say. So if you watched this with me while it was live, thank you for watching, and I really hope to hear some more comments on the replay. I'm genuinely curious about how you folks feel about this. So I'm going to finish the rest of that documentary tonight. Who knows? Maybe there'll be a second video. I do also want to let you folks know that this Tuesday night at 8:15 on the Conversations official page, we've got a dope conversation coming up with my friend Brad, who was actually worked in full-time Christian ministry for 20 years and then began deconstructing and really sort of reevaluating the world outside of that mindset, and came to really realize a lot of abusive behavior that he had been a part of and been subject to at the church. So Tuesday night, we're going to have a conversation about gaslighting, and in particular spiritual and religious gaslighting, because if many people have been in church, right, have left due to this sort of religious and spiritual abuse more so than the theology of the church in general. So that'll be coming up this Tuesday night at 8:15. I have an event posted on the Conversations official page. I'll post the link in the comment box down here. Make sure to check it out this Tuesday at 8:15. Emily, thank you so much. Enjoy your day. I'll talk to all you guys soon. Bye.
This has been the Conversations Podcast. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or comments or just want to get involved, feel free to join the conversation on social media. You can find us at Conversations Official on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And please don't forget to rate, follow, and share this podcast. We're available on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.